SCH garage, we're cutting into clean sheet metal in the name of acceleration. So like I stated in the last video, today we're going to be installing this nice 15-gallon aluminum fuel cell into the bed of the Dakota.
Alright, Genius, here's a real good question. Did you clean the garage?
You know, that's not important. What is by putting this fuel cell here and getting rid of the factory tank out in front of the axle, we're going to reduce our 60-foot and quarter-mile times. So let's get started.
Without cleaning the garage.
Alright, let's go over all the tools and hardware we're using today. We have a drill with a 1/2-inch drill bit that we're going to use to make holes through the bed to put our hardware in. That is that stuff up there in the right corner. That's all stainless 7/16 hardware. Then we have a 4.5-inch grinder with a steel cutoff disc. That's what we're going to be using to cut most of the hole with. Some Sharpies to make lines with, of course. A tape measure to find centers and such. You know what that's used for, obviously. That's why they call it tape measure. Right, Matt?
Yes, because you're supposed to measure twice, cut once. But in our case, we're going to measure about 15 times and cut 30, hopefully.
Only 30. Also, safety first. Gonna want some gloves. Cut off discs and hot metal particles and all kinds of stuff can be real dangerous. You don't want to burn yourself, cut yourself, etc. I can hear the comment section going crazy. You ain't gotta do that. Anyways, also in the name of safety, we have a full face shield here. The gas mask is kind of unnecessary on this, but I've seen these cut-off discs blow apart, and we're going to try to protect what's left of Matt's ugly mug when he does cut this hole. We have a grinding disc that we probably won't use because we have a file to try to clean up the hole better. And a sawzall is what we're going to use to finish the cuts. Normally you'd see somebody like drill and then grind to get the corners, but I'm going to try to keep the piece that we're cutting out of the bed possible to be welded back in the future in case I, for whatever reason, get a wild hair that I'm going to put this thing back to stock, which will probably never happen. Alrighty, so prior to starting to shoot this video, I went ahead and already pulled the measurements. This is our fuel cell. It's going to be 24 inches wide. I found our center to be 12, so we can mark that on the cell and on the bed. Our sump that we actually have to cut the hole for is measured out here to be 6.5 inches by 6 3/4. And then I went ahead and measured the bed. I measured from stake pocket to stake pocket, or really from this surface to the opposite surface. Found our centers for that. We're going to be marking off the back of the bed, and hopefully moving forward we'll probably pull some extra measurements just to make sure. So let's make some marks and get ready to cut. Alright, so hopefully this shows up on the video alright, but as you can see, we have our hole marked out here that we're going to cut. Going to let Matt do the honors here and do our cuts up to the corner on each one. And then we're going to try to finish it off with the sawzall, so we hopefully get one good clean cut, and that if I need to in the future, like I said prior, I can weld this back in, although I really don't intend to. I'd rather just do the precautions now. Here it is. One last look at this really nice, clean inner bed. Cutting holes in a bed that has no rust in it, because that is what you do when you're hot rodding. Or as I like to say, tub 'em all.
You're a very brave soul letting me cut this.
He's not wrong.
Now don't tell my boss I was using a grinder without an angle guard.
Hey man, this ain't OSHA. There we have it, a hole. I May have wanted to cut that forward a little bit, but hey, I think we're going to be alright. We can just do some cool stuff to get our fuel line where it needs to go, because down here I have one of those old school Fram canister style fuel filters. We just need to tag in right where that AN line goes in. Time to hit all those nasty edges with the file.
Yes, I could be spending my Friday night at the bar. Or, wait, what's it, Saturday?
It is Saturday.
Night shift prawns. I could be spending my Saturday night at the bar, but I'm using it with a file on the bed of a truck. Lovely.
Party, party. Well, that's a hole, right?
Not my favorite, but it's a hole.
Well, yeah, it's not a glory hole, but alright. Time to protect all these bits down here, and we're going to spray some paint around this nice rough edge so that we don't get any more rust in the bed here, because, like I said earlier, this is a rust-free bed. I'd like to keep it that way.
Alright, Adam, you ready to test fit this?
I think we are. So, we're going to pick it up and drop it in.
Alright, let's put her in.
Down, back, and... beautiful. I like it. Let's make some holes so we know where to punch them. Or at least marks for these holes. I'm going to get her a little better centered here. I like that.
A wild Adam in his natural habitat.
You know it. Alright, so we're going to stick the Sharpie down. Make some nice little circles, little happy circles.
Make your shoes make it sound like you're farting over there.
Well, you know, wet shoes, metal do that, I suppose. Alright, let's get ready to make some holes in this. More holes, that is.
Alright, Adam, what are you holding there in your hand?
This is a tool that we didn't mention earlier, but it's really nice to have. This particular one's from Atco Tools. You can pick them up from Harbor Freight, so on and so forth. It's not necessary, but like I said, they're really nice to have. This is an automatic center punch. And we have a 1/16 of play here with these holes because we're drilling a 1/2 inch hole, but we're using a 7/16 fastener. But what you can do here is get your rough center. Once you hear that click, it's made a little indent in the metal. Usually do that once or twice. And now, when you take your drill bit, the very tip of it should kind of pilot itself right there in the center of that, so you get your hole in where it needs to be. So, I'm going to center punch the rest of these, and we're going to make some more holes. So, a little thing about hardware. Today we're using 7/16 diameter by 1 1/4 inch length bolts. They look like they're going to work just perfectly. Along with that, I'm using stainless nylock bolts because they're nylock nuts. We don't want these to shake loose. And then some washers. I suppose a tip about hardware. Now, I didn't go through this channel to find this hardware, but if you do have an Ace Hardware local to you, and they don't sponsor us, we don't have any sponsors. I mean, this is the second video we've ever made, and not a famous drag racer yet. But anyways, if you can go to an Ace, you could probably find a little bit better selection than I did through the hardware store I went to. But in my experience, it's been the best place to get hardware so far. Normally you can go there and they have any and everything you'd ever need. So with that being said, and that being your tip for the day, I suppose, we're going to go ahead and start putting in all these bolts, nuts, and washers, and we're going to mount this cell. Now the way that this ended up laying out with the measurements of my fuel cell, I ended up to where I'm in the divots in the bed rail system here. So I'm going to end up using a stack of 3 washers underneath each mounting tab to try to keep this from bending the tabs downwards as I tighten the fasteners. So luckily I bought an 18 pack of washers. If I were you, I would buy more than that because I'm going to end up where I don't have quite enough washers to go on the underside of the bed. But that's probably okay. We're fastening aluminum that really shouldn't move the way this sump's cut, but if you prefer to have washers on the back side, which, I don't know, it wouldn't hurt anything, but we're not going to have that for this, so let's go ahead and throw these in.
Unless we can find some in the scrap pile.
Nah, I'm not looking there. So I managed to make a slight miscalculation here in the mounting of this fuel cell. Now it could probably be solved by maybe getting a couple 90-degree AN ends, which I don't have, and we're putting this thing in now. So crawl under here and see if that'll adjust a little bit. So what we're dealing with here, taped off here, is my -8 AN, and I don't quite have enough room there to probably bring my end and make a decent bend with the hose. So where those marks are at, we're going to cut this bed support just a little bit, so hopefully we can come out straight here and do kind of a sweeping bend. Try to follow my finger here. Come down, around, and then back into the fuel filter housing. So we're gonna get on that, and we'll get back with you as soon as that's done.
So you're just going to bend it out of the way, or are you going to actually...
I'm going to go through and cut it. I want to make sure... I kind of hate to leave this edge, but that gives me an opportunity for another tech tip. Let me saw this off, and I'll get back to you with that tech tip. Alright, so another tech tip today. Down there we have some rough edges where we cut that out. There's going to be a hose there. Now, I know it's braided stainless, and the likelihood of it getting abraded is kind of low. I just want to make 100% sure we don't run into that issue. Now this might be common knowledge for a lot of people that have built a lot of cars, but for those of you that are novices, don't take offense to the term, but not everybody's built a lot of cars. What we're going to do to protect this hose from that sharp edge is use some hose. So what you do, you're going to take a sharp razor blade, you can always cut away from yourself, just make a slit right up the middle of the hose if you can, just split it. Like so. You can see it's split open down the middle. I'm going to cut a little more here because I have to do both edges of that. It's the most entertaining thing to watch. Alright, so that's probably enough. So we'll cut that off and get some tape stuck on me. So now this will slide right on that rough metal edge. You can use some like weather strip adhesive or any other kind of adhesive, epoxy, probably not epoxy, I just use some kind of weather strip adhesive to hold this to the body, and that'll keep that hose from abrading and getting tore up and causing you a big nasty fuel leak and dumping out 15 gallons of 110 all over your driveway and eating up the asphalt or the track. You know, they love it when you do that. So we're going to put this on now to protect that, and then we're going to start putting the big pain in the ass fittings here on the AN hose. Alright, so we're having to reshoot this because originally we shot it in 4x fast motion. So it was just me doing a lot of this and no sound. So we're going to talk about the hardware we're using now to plumb the fuel system itself. This fuel cell, as you can see, I tighten that cap up. It uses -10 outlets. And our fuel system is not quite -10 big. That would be probably damn near funny car sized. So we're going to go down to a -8 line here to plumb into that fuel filter that I showed you earlier. So down there, already installed because we shot this once with it out, there is a -10 to -8 adapter. We're going to run that into this -8 hose with a couple of hose ends on it to connect it into the fuel filter, which we already installed our NPT to -8 adapter into. And then something I wanted to explain, you've probably seen it so far in this video, and you're not quite sure what this big mess hanging off the end of the fuel cell is here.
It's Adam's popsicle.
Alright then. No, this is actually a rollover valve. I'm not sure that the NHRA 100% certain requires these because I don't think I've seen many of these on cars, to be completely honest with you. I know in Circle Track, you know, they want you to have this. So what this is, it's pretty much a cylinder in it that has a check ball in it. When it's down, we're venting our fuel vapor into the atmosphere so the tank doesn't, you know, expand and try to blow the lid off or something. It doesn't, you know, draw a vacuum down on the cell, so we starve fuel up front. So this acts as a vent right now, and in the off chance and unfortunate event that we end up upside down on this truck, that ball goes up here, closes off this vent so fuel doesn't spill everywhere if we're upside down. It's a safety feature, something that, like I said, I'm not sure the NHRA requires it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was in their rule book. I mean, I have a new copy, I probably should pop it open and look. But, so we have that installed here. I just need to put something over this end, which I'm, in all reality, probably just going to find some foam mesh deal to put over this and zip tie on. Normally you'd run a line out to somewhere or whatnot, but really don't see a need to do that since the bed of this truck's open. So that's what that is. Thank you, neighbors. That's what that is. And anyways, back to plumbing the fuel system. Alright, now we're to the fun part of putting the hose ends on. Now, I did this one off camera, and I also did this one off camera, but to explain to you what I did here, once you find your length, I like to wrap some electrical tape around the braid and then cut it. I used a bandsaw. You can use whatever, but generally the smoother the cut you can get, the better. So I don't suggest like a portaband. You could use a sorry, not a portaband, but a sawzall. You can use a hacksaw. They do make actually a braided stainless cutter that would be ideal for this, but I don't own one. They're about $100, I think. But put a few wraps of electrical tape on, cut it, and then you want to take the electrical tape back to the point that there's just maybe one wrap on there. And I usually leave the electrical tape on under this just to hold the braids together. So it's kind of a fun game of pinching down your braids and shoving this end on, and you want to shove it down until, you probably can't see on camera, but you want to shove it down until you see the rubber hit the bottom of the threads.
What happens and what's it look like if you don't use the tape?
If you don't use the tape, what happens when you cut it? It does that. Good luck fighting a hose end on that, because you're going to stab the ends of your fingers with all that braided stainless. It's going to hurt. You're going to cuss a lot.
Yeah, look at all that fraying.
Yes, this feels good when you jam it into the end of your finger and it finds your bone. So don't just like cut it without any wraps of tape or anything, because it'll look like that. Don't want that. So now that this is fought on, they sell all kinds of really nice expensive tools to work with braided stainless. I just do it the old school no tools way, because to be completely honest with you, this isn't a show car. It doesn't bother me if I get, you know, some scuffs on my stuff. So I'm going to wrap this in now with a couple wraps of electrical tape to protect it from my vise. Alright, so now we have it in the vise. We have our hose end here that goes on. This is the part that's going to go to your connector. I like to put a little bit of lubricant on here. You kind of need to fight these together dry is not fun. So just a light coating of some assembly lube. That's just engine assembly lube, it's nothing fancy. So now, going to hit the threads. And something you want to do is hold this end of the vise. Because what's going to happen when you start tightening this is going to try to shove the hose out of the end of that connector. The electrical tape will kind of help hold it, but not well enough to just freehand it. So, or when you have the right side wrench, just going to turn this end on, holding everything together. Which is going to get fun towards the very last few threads because you're going to end up fighting the vise. And it's better if your vise is bolted down and not just sitting on the tail, the bed of, bumper of a truck. So there you go, an assembled hose end. So now you're going to take your electrical tape off. Hopefully you did not totally mar or destroy anything here. I got a little bit because the wrench slipped, typical issues you're going to deal with. Using electrical tape, you're probably going to end up with a little bit of that nice black residue on there. Just wipe it off.
Did you scratch the paint any on it? Dice.
Just a little bit, not enough to worry me. And then you're going to want to give it a tug test. Really put some force in it, and if it doesn't come out, you should have a good A-in hose. So this is going to go between our outlet of the fuel cell and that fuel filter housing. Alright, so we're going to show you how to cut this braided stainless without all the hassle and all the special tools. Well, I guess a quarter band's a special tool, but you can use a bandsaw or a regular hacksaw to cut through this. I don't suggest using a sawzall or anything like that. So you don't want a violent cut, you just want a clean cut. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap this with electrical tape. A few wraps here and there. Get you a nice solid band. And what you're going to do is you're going to try to cut it right here in the middle. So, cut it.
Safety first.
Yeah, you want that guard out. If you get stupid with a bandsaw, I don't know if you can see my knuckle very well. There's a nice scar right across there.
I don't see it. Put your hand out. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, you'll do that if you're not safe with one of these, and then you got to go to the hospital, get x-rayed 2 or 3 times, set of stitches, get your hand washed out. Not a very fun experience, especially when the nurse practitioner starts jamming into your knuckle with her forceps trying to dig metal particles out. So here we go. Gonna cut this now. Keep your fingers out of this area. Nice smooth cut, not a lot of pressure. There you go. As you can see, this doesn't look like this. This is what you want. It's going to make sliding that hose end on a lot easier. You're not going to jam your fingers with the braided stainless. You get a pretty decent cut. You probably get a little better cut if you buy the actual big bunny ear shears that they use to cut this stuff with. And there's, like I said, tons and tons and tons and tons of special equipment you can use to make A-end ends. Not really necessary unless you're doing a show cut. Alright.
Alright, Adam, what do we got going on under here?
This is pretty much done down here. You'll always want to verify all your connections are tight. So our plug is tight, so we're not going to leak fuel. This guy is tight, our adapter. That's nice and tight now. Oops.
It's hard to see, but that's the fuel filter.
Yep, all our connections here are tight now. You always want to make sure that once you're done installing everything, just so you don't have a leak once you add fuel to this. And then we're going to come back and probably put some form of strap or zip tie or something here to keep that from flapping in the breeze. But I mean, other than that, this job's just about wrapped up.
And here's that poly, if it's hard to focus on, but that's what he was talking about, or rubber line to keep the metal off the rough surfaces from the cuts. And that's about it down here.
Yep, we'll show you the top side. We're going to talk about the sending unit in this. We're not going to hook the sending unit up today, but we can just take a quick talk about it. And yeah, here you go. Fuel cell. Well, I think that's going to wrap up our episode just about. Fuel cell is now installed in the Dakota. It's plumbed. We're just about ready to run it. The only thing we're missing now is the fuel gauge. This comes with a 0 to 90 ohm GM style fuel sender, and we're not going to do it in this video, but we're going to plumb it in with, or rather wire it in with this nice outdoor rated cable. I just happened to come across it at work. I'm an electrician. This is getting tossed, so I'm going to use that. And then we picked up a 2 1/16 inch gauge. That's a 0 to 90 ohm. We'll hook it up. I'll probably do a install video on that when the time comes. Not sure when that'll be. We got plenty of projects here to work on. We are probably going to be working on some Miatas next. We'll see what happens though. Next few videos beyond that are going to be probably working on the power plant for this thing. Machine shop should be finished up with the crankshaft here shortly. I just have to send the block into them to have them do the cam bearings, since I don't have the tool and I'm really not trying to root a bunch of cam bearings. So yeah, that about do it. We'll see you next time, and happy wrenching out there.